Hello everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the KOBCast. Today we are going to be talking about Yayoi, which is really hard to see in this light. My apologies. I love this color. This yarn is from the Uncommon Thread. It is the most beautiful, chestnutty, gorgeous brown. That is extremely hard to get on camera, so apologies for that. Yayoi is part of Knitting Outside the Box, the Uno, and it is all about using stitch patterns that manipulate your gauge in order to shape your fabric. So how that works for this one is you can see up here it's got drop stitches in the yoke going all the way down. And what that does is that the yarn it takes to create a knit stitch is about 3 times as wide as the knit stitch itself. So what happens when we take that into account is that when you drop a knit stitch, it's like, holy mother of all that's good and holy, how is that so wide? Like, it was just this little tiny knit stitch and now it's this huge ladder in there. The yarn it takes to create a knit stitch is 3 times as wide as the stitch itself. So we can either just have that fact in the back of our heads. That's like a really good knitting night trivia thing. Everyone's gonna think you're really cool. Or we can use that to manipulate our fabric and kind of create extra width in there. So what Yayoi does is that it goes in and uses those drop stitches in place of a bunch of increases in the yoke. So Yayoi is top down. You start with a smaller number of stitches out here, you increase out, and then as you continue to increase, you create these columns that once you get to this point in the yoke, get dropped and raveled all the way back to their increase point. And what that does is that when you look at the yoke of Yayoi before dropping it, it's this very like conical, not super attractive thing. When you drop those stitches, everything moves out and you get a much cleaner, much more normative shaped yoke. So if you're knitting Yayoi, stick with it. It's okay. It's gonna get normal, I promise. The equivalent on that is that when we go to work the rest of the body, there are cast-ons here, and those cast-ons range from 2 to 3 stitches depending on where it is in the pattern. So that's how much space we created with these drop stitches that we didn't have before if we were just doing regular old stockinette. So that's the whole point of Yayoi. But one thing I also did in Yayoi is, if we turn it around, oh Lord, I should have prepped that before going on camera. The dress form is not the most sexy piece of machinery ever. One thing I did in Yayoi, and one thing that I tend to do on raglans and circular yoke pullovers, is that Yayoi has a set of short rows here in the back that it doesn't have in the front. And some people look at that and they're like, well, why? Why would we do that? The reason we do that is based on the human body. Because if you look at the shape of a human body, if I turn sideways and if I work on really good posture, you can see I have nice back shoulders. But typically, we're forward like here. Look at the curve of my back. Okay? So that curve in my back means that and that's normal. We all have it as human beings. It's okay to slouch. It's 2020. It's okay. What that curve means is that often the length of distance from that top vertebrae, right at the base of your neck, to the hem on your sweater is longer in the back than it is in the front. I'm going to move her over a little bit. There we go. So what that means is that oftentimes if we do a raglan or a circular yoke, those are often written with the same distance in the front and the same distance in the back. And we end up doing this thing where we end up tugging down on the back to get it to not ride up and do the whole lovely muffin top thing, which, by the way, that was entirely the fault of low-cut jeans. That was not our bodies. That was low-cut jeans. High-waisted jeans, just forever and always. So we get this awful combination of pulling it down in the back, which pulls the neckline up in the front, which chokes you. So it's not great. So what we can do instead is use these short rows here to help kind of tick the entire yoke forward a little bit. Add some height in the back and bring the front neck down. Okay, and you can do those in a couple places. If you're doing a circular yoke, oftentimes you'll do it before or after any of that yoke action. You can also do it at the top of the neckline. So in O'Keefe, which is another one that I did in this section of Knitting Outside the Box, all of that short row shaping happens like right after the cast on from the top down. Totally doable. There is no right answer on this, but both of those situations get you a little bit of extra height in the back and make it a little bit easier to wear. We do that. And it is worth it. It really does help make a difference in the feel and the fit of the finished sweater. So I totally recommend adding those short rows anytime you're working a raglan or a circular yoke pullover, like Yayoi. So Yayoi is named for Yayoi Kusama, who is an amazing visual artist and writer and poet. And I'm just absolutely obsessed with her work with polka dots and pumpkins, and just the way that she also is very open and upfront about her mental illness and her mental health, and how she uses that both for her art and uses her art as a coping mechanism. And I think it's really amazing to have someone like that be such a large figure in the current art world. So I wanted to honor her with this pullover. If I could have designed something with polka dots that worked this way, I totally would have. All right, so I think that is it for me this week. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and thanks again for watching. Bye, everyone.